Please welcome Nutanix Vice President and General Manager Cloud Native, Dan Cerulli.
Good morning, Chicago. It is fantastic to see you. It's fantastic to be here. And I'm really excited to spend the next few minutes in a conversation. I'm going to bring out a special guest, and we're going to have a little bit of talk about Kubernetes. This is someone who I had the pleasure of working with in my time at Google, who really took on the mantle of not just being part of the Kubernetes movement, but of introducing Kubernetes to the world. And I'm hoping over the next few minutes, through our conversation, he will help introduce Kubernetes to a bunch of you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome retired distinguished engineer from Google and close friend, Kelsey Hightower. Kelsey, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm happy to be here, but look, before we get started, I had a wonderful 25-year career. Like you mentioned, I'm retired, but I'm not tired. And I remember the last few months at Google, I got promoted to distinguished engineer. And it's one of those things where you work your whole career to get to this point. Someone gave me this fun fact that there's more people who've climbed Mount Everest than have ever become a distinguished engineer at Google. And I remember being, I don't know if it was humble, but maybe a bit shy. I didn't want to tell anyone. And I remember being at a conference just like this, woke up, had a good day, went to kind of the vendor area, and then here comes Dan from afar. I haven't seen Dan for maybe a year to that point. And I remember you looked at me and you were like, hey, Kelsey, I heard about the promotion. The first thing I thought was like, who told you? And I remember you stood there with this patience as if almost no one else was in the room. And you're like, you earned that distinguished engineer. You didn't play the game. You didn't game the system. I remember when you started your career, you said you were pulling cables in a data center. I watched you kind of navigate this open source arena, and then you come to this place like Google, and I remember you were a PM on the Istio team. You allowed me to come and make an impact across the aisle. And you had this kind of emotional connection, like, hey, you've earned every bit of it. And I remember going back to my hotel and just posting on the internet that I got promoted to distinguished engineer. And it was amazing because all of the people in my community, all the people in my tech circle, they all responded like, we got promoted to distinguished engineer? I was like, yeah, but I keep the paycheck. So it was dope to have that community and to be here today to see the community still thriving 12 years later.
So I remember that moment too. I was very proud of you, and I think it's fantastic. So, you know, a lot of these people here, starting a lot like you, right? Starting doing the work. You know, you were pulling cables, you got into open source. What were the principles you think that made a difference? Because not everybody who pulls cable in a data center ends up as a distinguished engineer, ends up on this stage. What are the principles that guided you as you were able to go from here to the very top of Everest?
I'm gonna be honest, when I first got my first IT job, like a real enterprise IT job, I remember coming in and there was like a dress code, collar shirt, jeans on Friday. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, this is what the professionals do. The collar shirt helps you type better. And one thing that kind of scared me earlier in my career were, I remember meeting some people that had 20 years of one-year experience. They learned how to install Linux and they made no progress after that. They learned how to manage their Juniper switches and made no progress after that. And since they never went deep, whenever we saw these technology changes, like when Docker came out, you know, people were thinking, no, there's this new networking thing just for containers. And I would scratch my head and say, no, there's only networking. Docker introduced no new concepts. It's still the same TCP IP stack as before. It runs on the same hardware as before. Maybe we changed the abstractions just a little bit, but for the people that didn't go deep, they got confused. And they started Googling for things like container networking solutions, or that this thing is being some innovation that they can't understand. But I think the people who really respect the fundamentals, so for all those people that are certified, you know the Cisco stuff, you manage your current Nutanix stack, the truth is you pretty much know 80% of all of this stuff that we call modern or cloud native. But if you just understood those fundamentals, I think you wouldn't be as scared anymore. So the thing that helped me really progress my career was I took those fundamentals, and that's where the innovation comes from, actually. The people who know the underlying parts of the stack, those are the people who create the new programming languages. Those are the people who go and create the new abstractions because they understand the details below. And so if you want to be creative, and I think you want to have a successful career, You got to go take those fundamentals and then reimagine what they look like above.
That is fantastic advice, and I agree entirely. The fundamentals don't change as all this stuff happens. So the other thing that happens as you progress through your career is you gotta learn these, we'll call them hard skills, these technical skills, but you gotta pick up soft skills as well. How do people think about that as they think again about growing their career? Where do those lie?
You know, the funny thing about the soft skills, most of the people that talk about hard skills don't have the soft skills. And I'm looking at all of these tools and they're automating away, quote unquote, all the hard skills. And you're looking at what the value that's left were the things you traditionally classified as the soft skills. You have to actually understand the architecture, the big picture, and be able to describe to whatever tooling you're using, the things to your colleague. The only thing that will be left at the end of this era are probably the soft skills. And the soft skills are intuition, style and taste, having an opinion about what the experience should be. I don't know why as an industry we classify those as soft skills. Those are the hardest things to do. And I think that's where people are going to realize that we're going to have to switch that bit in the next chapter.
So we just saw Mono on stage talking about AI. We talk about AI a lot, and there's the applications of AI, but it's also, I think, people think a lot about how AI is going to change their careers, right? It's convenient to have it home. What's the effect if you're sitting in that chair right there? What's the effect that you think that person should be thinking about as they think about how AI is going to impact what they do in their career and how it progresses?
Boy, I wish we never called it artificial intelligence. Because I think a lot of people stop thinking at that point as almost if they can't compete with this thing, so they should just stop trying. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that a lot of this technology isn't about the future, it's usually a checkpoint on the past. Kubernetes, all these things we talk about, those are things that we learned how to do a decade prior, and we finally figured out how to turn them into products. When I look at AI, I think a lot of people forget the fundamental piece is we trained the machines. It's your real life experiences, every bug you fixed in production, all those little bash scripts that you decided to share with other people via GitHub, all of that became the training data. And then that's the thing that we try to then turn into a model. But the thing that's different between you and those models is that you have the soft skills. You have the experience, you have that intuition. You know that this piece of software is going to crash in the middle of the night because that's when the backups run. This is that additional set of context that I think a lot of people try to almost distill into a model. And I don't think that's the right way to think about it. So I'm hoping people don't sit there and wait for AI to happen to them. I think AI, to me, becomes just this normalization. I'll give you one good example. I meet a lot of people on the floor, like, what are you excited about? They're like, agentic AI. I was like, oh, explain it. I was like, I can't. So I'm excited. And then I asked them, what kind of task are you doing with this new state-of-the-art agentic AI? And they were like, well, we can reset passwords using an agent. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty amazing. Walk me through it. All right, imagine someone at the company forgets their password. They can go into Slack and the bot would interact with them. Hey, I'm Kelsey, I forgot my password. And the agent will burn $2 trillion worth of tokens and call an API and reset their password. Look at that. I was like, oh, that is pretty amazing. I have this tool, it's like 4 acronyms, like BASH, bash. And I use curl and I do the exact same thing. And they're like, well, it's not an agent because it didn't burn any tokens. And I was like, oh, no. This is the zero token architecture. And they was like, what? When did that come out? Like, just now. And if you want to impress your manager, I know some of you work in some companies where they're starting to implement these things like AI quotas. How much AI did you use this week? Some people are actually getting a report into their email box. So if you want to game the system out, I'll give you a good trick. A lot of you are Linux system administrators. SSH to your servers. You can use Puppet, Chef, or Ansible to automate this if you need to. And there's this directory, it's like etc cron.d. And there's a bunch of these little things that run in this loop, and they do all kind of tasks, right? Just rename that to like etc agent.d. And you have all of these agents doing all these automatic things using the zero token architecture. So I'll give you that one for free, and you all could be doing agentic AI immediately.
Okay, so you've moved on from Google, and you are now, of course, you are advising startups. You're part of the venture capital industry. You're helping investors figure out where to put their money. As you talk to companies right now, many of whom are probably saying AI, not all of them. What is it that you are telling them? How do you help them look at technologies and evaluate that technology?
I don't know. I'm very much a people person. Like I've had pretty much every job sitting in this audience. I understand what it was like to have those change windows where you come in at midnight and you wrap up at 6 a.m. Some of you come in still at midnight and wrap up at 6 a.m. And then when I think about why we do this, we're literally building technology for each other. At the end of the day, we're humans, and for those companies that are struggling, like what should we build? If you're still asking that question, then you probably need to hit the pause button and go interact with your colleagues or your potential customers to find out what it is. But I think for most people, it's just really taking that hard look in the mirror. The fundamentals haven't changed. I guarantee you in 10 years, hopefully most of you will still be here, maybe your job will be slightly different, but I guarantee you those that understand the fundamentals will be the most creative amongst us, and you will all be inventing the new, whether it's agents or programming language or frameworks. And I think what I'm seeing now is a lot of people that are moving around, they're taking all their enterprise experience and they're turning them into products. One thing I have to advise people in this cloud native movement, there's a company that makes tax software, Intuit. They created one of the state-of-the-art CI/CD systems. Argo CD came out of a tax company. And so a lot of the innovation that I think we're going to see going forward from the people like you all that are doing the real work in production, no more pie in the sky, we need to make it actually work. So I think you all will be the ones driving that.
All right, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. It has been, just so everyone knows, I've had a really, really great week. It's very rare that your company says, yeah, let's bring your old friend out and let him just hang out all week. It's been fantastic. But you've gotten to see Nutanix up close for the first time in a while, and we only have 1 minute left. What's your favorite feature?
I'm wearing the t-shirt. You know, naturally it's the NKP platform.
Yeah, you can clap for NKP, I'll allow it, I'll allow it.
But the funny thing, I was here in 2015, right around the time Kubernetes came out, and I remember doing a technical session, and a lot of people in the audience were like, what's that? That's probably not going to work. So what it's been, like 7 years later, we're back, and there's so many people that are explaining Kubernetes to me. A lot of people don't even know who I am. One of the early committers to the project, even wrote a whole book on it. But it's been a real joy for people to explain Kubernetes to me and how they're using it in production. So to see this thing come full circle, to see a company like Nutanix put that thing in the product, and make it a first-class citizen, that's amazing.
That's fantastic, that's fantastic. Well listen, there may or may not be artificial intelligence. We may have named it right, we may have named it wrong. What there is definitely not is artificial wisdom. And I want to thank you for sharing your all-natural wisdom with us today. Thanks, Kelsey.